Welcome, everybody. This is episode 107 of Altadena Talks, and this is obviously our special time with Toni Talks. I am Jamal Smith. We have Brian, who's on assignment right now, so we won't be joining us. But of course, we have
Toni Bailey Rains, and our most special guest today, LA County Assessor Jeff Prang, on the line on the show with us today. So, Jeff, thank you so much for coming on. Super excited that you're here today.
pop off so you guys can talk.
Thanks, Jamal. And I know a lot of people want to hear from you. So I'm thankful that you agreed to come on the show.
Absolutely. We've got a lot of important information that people need to know, and sometimes it's kind of difficult to navigate the property assessment process. So I'm happy to be here to untangle that and answer some of these more nuanced questions that people are sure to have.
Thank you so much. Well, let's get started. We'll kick off first. We're about 2 minutes late, and for whatever reason this morning, my computer decided to act crazy. Everyone was on the line, and I came on and had no mic and no video. And we always ask people to log in about 10 minutes early so we can, do our audio and video checks. And mine decided to go haywire today. So, but I'm here now, and I'm glad. And so what we're going to do is talk about all of the stuff that we need to help people in our community when it comes to the assessments. We put a link out and asked people if they wouldn't mind, giving us questions for you, but we literally had no questions come in. So I have a couple questions and other stuff that I know is very important that you want to convey to the community. We'll talk about all of that today. Okay, so what we're going to kick it off with is I want to know, as someone who, my sister lost their homes, right, up in Altadena, although this applies to really the entire county and any disaster. But the most recent ones, obviously, are the fires, the Eaton fire for Altadena, some of Pasadena and Sierra Madre, and Palisades, right? So when it comes to people filling out that Calamity form, and I'm probably not even saying the correct name. I know you will correct it.
Misfortune and Calamity.
Misfortune and Calamity. Thank you. What if some people still have not done it? Is there a deadline? Like we know we saw FEMA and SBA and all these other county deadlines. Is there a deadline for that as well?
There is a deadline. It is 12 months after the date of the incident, which would be the date of the fire. Although I am sponsoring a piece of legislation that, if adopted and signed by the governor, will extend that application period to 24 months. Because we recognize that, if you've lost your home, your life is all turned upside down, and trying to figure out all the nuances, all the bureaucratic things you need to do to pull things back together, you may not even know what you don't know that you need to know. So we want to make sure we give people enough time to figure things out, to navigate the process. But also, I did want to assure people that if your home was damaged or destroyed, which entitles you to property tax relief, we ask you to fill out the Misfortune and Calamity form. That's helpful information that we need. But even if you did not, we are still lowering the value of your property. We're just doing it with a little bit less information. You're still going to get a reduction in your assessed value, whether or not you filled out the application. That being said, it's really important we get that information on the application. We need to be able to get in touch with you because if your mailing address was the address for the home that burned down and you're not there anymore, that's our contact information. We need the application will help us to ensure that we can get you information that you need.
Thank you. And you said something really important just now about the mailing addresses. And I wanted to talk about that because I do understand that some people are due a refund because they had just paid their property taxes for, the land and the structure, and they're owed a refund for that, but you can't reach them. Like you've sent a check out or something and it's returned. So what is happening with that? And what should people be doing?
So, great question. I'm happy to answer it. Let me offer just a little bit of background information first. So with this entire process with property assessment, property taxes, there's actually several different departments that have a role, and each one of them does a different thing.
Okay.
Joke that the system was designed for maximum public confusion. So there's a whole bunch of different departments doing different things, and nobody really quite understands it. So what happens when I'm in charge of property valuation. So if your property is damaged or destroyed due to the fire, it's my job to change the value of your property to reflect that damage. If your home was destroyed, we're going to zero out the value for the home. Once we do that, we sent out, you should have received something called a notice of assessment change, indicating that your property value is being reduced to reflect that damage. Following that, the auditor controller, which is a different department, they're the fiscal officer for the county, then issue a refund check for the taxes that you already paid. And then following that, you're going to get a recalculated tax bill from the treasurer tax collector's office to make the adjustment in your property taxes due to the fire. So there are about 17,000 properties that we sent a notice of assessment change to back in April and May. Following that, the auditor controller sent out property tax refunds. The challenge is about 40% of the damaged properties that the owners did not fill out a claim form. We proactively applied the reduction without getting a form, which means that the only address that we have on file is the last address you gave us, which is probably the site address, which means those refunds are coming back to us. You need to update your mailing address if you have not already. If you filled out a claim form, we probably asked you for the best address, and we are able to get you information promptly. But you can go on our website and you can update your mailing address. There's a few security steps that you have to go through. But if you anticipate moving more than once during this transition period, you can update that mailing address as often as necessary. But if you don't update it, we're going to have a very difficult time getting information to you, in particular, these refund checks. And I know this is really important because people may need that money right now, given all the crisis that they've been going through.
Right. That's super important. You know what? Let me check something. Assessor Prang, can you hear me?
I can hear you.
Okay. It sounded like I was echoing and all kinds of stuff. And again, I'm having some technical challenges this morning. So what happens then, because I just learned from someone in a conversation yesterday afternoon that they found out that there were two or three elderly ladies in Altadena that literally haven't done anything. FEMA, forms, they are not tech savvy. They don't have computers, laptops, or anything. And obviously, you said it's a 12-month period and hopefully will be extended to 24 if the governor signs the legislation that you've put forth. But if somebody just doesn't know, right? And you said they can go onto the site, but if they're not tech savvy and don't have anyone to help them, they're elderly, don't have kids or family, is there somewhere else that they should go or can go, and what would they do?
So they should go to the disaster relief centers.
Okay.
In those locations, all the relevant departments, including FEMA, are there, and you can take care of everything in person with representatives of each of those departments. Now, I'm not familiar with what all the deadlines are for other departments, but I think that the FEMA deadline has already passed.
Correct, it has.
And so if they didn't do that, I don't know what the consequences are. It could mean that they may not have access to FEMA support. But one place they can go to kind of as a one-stop place to get your questions answered is to your local representative, County Supervisor Catherine Barger. Her staff are probably really well trained to get you in touch with the right department that you need to help take care of your needs. But the easiest thing would be go to the disaster relief centers, because everything you need will be there on site. And you can just go from one table to the next. They can do it, take care of everything manually, even if you're not tech savvy. But please, don't. They should be encouraged to not wait any longer. We need to start getting them into the system.
Okay. And then I wanted to talk to you about, and we'll do them one at a time, but I'll just tell you now about Prop 13 and how it is affected with the fires and the rebuild, and later Prop 19, because I think people don't have all the information they need and really understand or know the nuances behind that. And part of that is, we know for the rebuilds, they're saying like for like, or, one day it was you have to do an exact like for like. The next week it was, no, we've waived that. As long as it's within the footprint, if you want to change where the bedrooms are or whatever, you can do that, right? As long as you stay within the footprint. But then we've also gotten information, and it is on the county website, that it says when you rebuild, you can rebuild that 10%, right? Without your property taxes being reassessed if you go up by 10%. However, homes that are 2,000 square feet or below need to increase by 200 square feet due to compliance for ADA, right? The hallways and the doors have to be larger, and the bathrooms have to now be accessible so that someone can roll in a wheelchair or a scooter, do a full turn or whatever, if they're on a walk or whatever, and go out without turning and hitting a wall, a cabinet, whatever. And I think people are confused because they're like, well, does that mean I can go up 10% and not have a reassessment? Or if it's 200 square feet, they're not going to reassess on that. And I want you to give us a clear answer, because the answer I've been telling people is the 10%, you can go up, you won't be reassessed. If you do the 200%, which is what it says, you have to go 10% or 200 square feet, whichever is greater. Then the 11% to whatever that additional is, right? If it's 150 square feet would make 10%. Then that extra 50 square feet would get a new assessment. So please tell us what the real answer is.
Sure. Yeah, there's a lot to unpack here. There's a lot of different moving parts. Some are related, some are not. So let me start at the very beginning. Proposition 13 is, or also known as Article 13 of the California Constitution, is what governs property assessment and taxes in California. So under Proposition 13 and some amendments that were made, if your property is destroyed or damaged in a disaster such as a flood, fire, or earthquake, if you rebuild to a standard which is called substantial equivalence, which means roughly the same size and use, your property taxes will not be increased. When you rebuild, even though it's a brand new structure, you will be assessed at your pre-fire assessment.
Okay.
Substantial equivalence is the standard that we use for property assessment. It generally means that the square footage is very similar, and the use is the same. If it was a residential home before, it has to remain a residential home. You can't convert it into commercial or some other type of use.
Got it.
Substantial equivalence is understood by all 58 county assessors in California. It's that standard is regulated by the Board of Equalization through a number of regulatory guidelines. We do not put a numeric standard on what that substantial equivalence means.
Okay.
So I'm reluctant to say this, but it really means if you're like within 5%, a little bit here, a little bit less there, then we would find that to be substantially equivalent.
Okay.
So now there's another set of regulations that deals with building codes that has nothing to do with your property taxes. It deals with the structure. And I'm not involved in that. That's something that the county planning department or the city of LA or city of Pasadena deal with. They're the ones who determine what can be built on a piece of property. Okay. So under this disaster, it falls under a disaster category called a major disaster. The governor's issued a major disaster proclamation. Under these conditions, you are allowed to rebuild with an expedited building permit up to 110% of what was previously there.
Okay.
The challenge is that there's confusion about what I do and what the city or the county are going to do. And you expressed that yourself. There's a lot of rumor out there that you can rebuild to 110% without being reassessed. That is not accurate. Based on assessor standards of a substantial equivalent, if you were to go to 110%, you now cross the line into what we call new construction, and new construction is assessable for tax purposes. Now, I did support legislation. I sponsored a bill that would align the building code standard with the assessment standard. Unfortunately, the state assembly killed that bill, which means if you build 10% extra, you'll end up getting a supplemental tax bill and an increase in your taxes. I will tell you, I'm pretty angry about that because I thought aligning those two standards would really help fire victims. And I do know that not to any deliberate effort, but we know that some city and county staff members were telling people you can build 110% without being assessed, simply because they didn't know. We worked hard to let them all know, not to give out misinformation. But we know that.
Well, I've said it here maybe 100 times because I've gone to the one-stop center. I've called the assessor's office myself and was told, yes, you do 100, you do the 10%, you won't be reassessed because it's within that. Anything they told me, literally 11% and above, you will get a supplemental bill for that, but the 10% you won't. And your property taxes would remain the same.
Sure. Well, I'm sorry that happened. So it surprised me if any of my people said that, but I do know that I did speak with LA County Planning and LA City Planning, and they were confused over those two standards. In order to try to fix that confusion, I sponsored Assembly Bill 1253 with Assembly Member Nick Schultz from Burbank, and that would have, if they had passed it, it would have taken away that confusion and just said that the additional 10% is not accessible. But they killed that bill for some inexplicable reason.
So what's going to happen then, Jeff, is that Assessor Prang, is people that have heard that and have gone to their contractors and everybody, a lot of people, because of this whole compliance and the 200%, whichever is greater, because that's on the county's website, are going to do that because their contractors believe the bathrooms have to be larger, due to building codes, building health and safety and all of this. And people are going to go that. So now, if their house was 1,500 square feet and their assessment was at that before, and they go to 1,700 because they have to, that's what they're being told, they're going to get assessed for 200 square feet as a supplemental bill, and their other will, for the 1,500, will be just what that is?
That's a possibility. Although you did say something that surprises me. I'm not familiar with this. I'm not familiar with any standards that require individual homes to be built to ADA standards. That's usually for publicly accessible properties. I've not heard that building codes require wider hallways and doorways. But the typical rule is if you're building something more than what was there, that piece which is more is subject to assessment. So if you had let's say you had 1,000 square foot house and you build a 1,500 square foot house, your like for like value on a 1,000 square foot house, your tax base would be restored. For that additional 500 square feet, you would be assessed as new construction at current market value, and you would have a new blended tax rate. I can't assure you that my staff and I are still exploring other means of aligning that 110% standard with our assessment standard. I do not want to issue an assessment increase to the victims of this fire if I don't have to. The legislature could have made it really easy. I'm now exploring other ways to try to address that, but I do just want everybody to be aware that under the well-established standards, if you build more, including 10% more, that would typically be subject to an increase in your assessment.
Okay, because I'm reading on this like for like rebuild on the LA County website, which is where we get the information, that it literally says it has to do with the like for like, but it says, it talks about the 20 foot on the setback, but it also says that it's 10% or 200 square feet, whichever is greater. And that's where we're getting this information. And it says like for like structures do not need to comply with current zoning requirements. So the fact is, it says for the Eaton Fire area only, you may increase the floor area by up to 200 square feet or 10%, whichever is greater. That's under the rebuilding. And so what is happening is we're echoing that. We're saying it on this podcast. I've said it, I don't know how many times, because it's in writing. And then people are thinking, go on, I'm sorry.
That information that you just read, that is accurate, but that is building code information. That deals with the physical structure that you're rebuilding. They're saying we're going to issue a permit up to 10% or 200 square feet. That's what they're allowing. But that is different. What the city allows in terms of what the structure is different from what I do, which is the value. I'm only concerned with the value. So if you, for example, if you had a 2,000 square foot house, which was shaped like an L, and you rebuild a 2,000 square foot house that's now built like a C, we don't care. I don't care about the footprint. I don't care about the setback. I don't care about the height. We're just looking at the square footage in terms of value. We're not looking at we won't be looking at the interior to see where the walls are. We're just going to be testing the equivalent size. However, the County of Los Angeles, which is in charge of building standards, they're going to tell you height restrictions, setback restrictions, building code standards. Those are and the size. Those are not things that concern us in terms of property assessment.
Okay, so that's where I think a lot of the confusion comes in, because I like the fact that you said you sponsored a bill to align those things, but it was killed. But the fact is, everyone is still very confused, because it's, you're like for like 10% or 200, whichever is greater. And because, like I said, I called your staff myself, and I got more than one time. And every time I got a different answer. And then someone finally told me the assessor of the day, and I'd have to look back because this is a couple months ago, but I'm sure I wrote it down, told me that is true, 10% or 200%, and anything at 11% or greater is where the assessment will be, not at 10%. So even within calling your assessor's office, we've gotten, and lots of people that I've talked to have gotten those answers, and it's confusion. So now some people are going to that 10% or 200 square feet and thinking, okay, the first 10%, I'll be okay, 11 and above. So it might be 50 square foot. I'll get reassessed on that, but not that 10%. So I don't know what you as a county assessor will do, but you're looking at Palisades, I know is different than Altadena, and this says Eaton Fire only. So the Altadena residents that are going to rebuild have had the confusion and aren't sure. And some are going to go up 200 square feet thinking the first 10% on their assessment will not be targeted or reassessed, and that 11% and above will. So I don't know how you will remedy that maybe in the future, or try to put another bill in, or say for the Eaton Fire only, since there was this confusion, we're going to align with it internally ourselves and go on and do that. So I'm hoping something comes out of it, right?
Well, absolutely. And I know how confusing this is for members of the public. I will say that even for government, this has been a little bit of a challenge, because the size and the scale and the extent of these fires have really pushed the envelope on the things that we do. We've never dealt with a disaster of this scale. So there's a lot of provisions in the law that we've never actually, that we've not used in years. So staff, we're trying to figure things out. So it's, if we gave bad information, I apologize. We're trying to figure things out to get good information to people as possible. However, I am, as I've stressed, very concerned about this difference in the building code allowance of up to 110% and the assessment standard, which is why I sponsored legislation. I knew just from what I was hearing, the fact that this information was being spread, that this was going to be a problem for people. And we were either going to fix it now, or we're going to deal with a lot of angry and frustrated people down the road, which is why I sponsored the legislation. And
Now, even though you sponsored it and it was killed, because that would be statewide and all, I believe you said 58 counties, it would apply to all 58. Is there anything or any exception that you, Assessor Jeff Prang, for the LA County area, could do an exemption, even if the law doesn't happen, and say for my county, for again, the Eaton fire only, because the confusion was there, we are going to make that exception and do that? Is that something, and I'm not putting you on the spot, I'm just saying, think about it, find out if there are ways or codes or something that would allow you to do that. And if there are, is that something you would consider?
It's absolutely something I'm considering. It's something we are actively studying as we speak. One of the challenges that I have, even though I'm an elected official, I'm not a policymaker. I am an administrator. So my job is to administer the laws that somebody else passes.
Okay.
And my ability to interpret those is relatively limited. So we are right now looking to see what type of interpretations we can make of the law that would allow me to align that building standard with the assessment standard. I understand the narrative. I understand the frustration that people experience if we can't do that, which is why I'm working so hard to try to find a solution.
Okay, thank you. I appreciate the work that you all are doing and you explaining that, because I probably feel like I'm a little more confused now than I was, but I do have some clarity, because I'm telling you, I have said that probably 100 times. You can do this or this because this is what we're reading, but not knowing that there's no alignment, right? And so
it's one of the things that's hard for people, would be difficult for people, but I wanted to emphasize is that there's a lot of different government agencies at the local, county, state, and federal level, and each one of them has different standards that and how they apply. The two big ones dealing with the rebuilding is there's a tax standard and there's a building code standard, and a lot of people blend those together. But what we do for assessment is different from what they do with building codes. Building codes are concerned about old codes versus new codes,
right.
complete or partial demolition. That's not the standard that we do under assessment, but we frequently, and not just in disaster cases, but all the time, hear that confusion from people.
So yeah, thank you, because again, we're on episode 107, and I've probably said it 100 times. I've probably said it on episodes. I've said it in meetings just yesterday. And so now I'm corrected, and I appreciate that, because now I can tell people, look, they're two totally separate things. This 10% or 200 square feet, yes, you can do, but that's for building codes and permits, but that is not going to affect or reflect what the assessment will be later. And it's going to be a work in progress, right? Because one thing we do know, like you said, none of us expected this. None of us have ever experienced it. So guess what happens? Now things are being done as we go. And we see that every week with changes. And so this is something that's huge. And like you said, deal with it now or deal with a lot of angry people later. And the fact that you as the administrator over it for LA County knows that you have to re-sponsor that bill or get people out there, or the angry people may have to come to their senators or whoever and say, look, this needs to happen. And then if it does and people have rebuilt, will it be retroactive to this fire, right?
I certainly would encourage your viewers. The bill was Assembly Bill 1253. I certainly encourage you to contact your state legislator, your assembly member, your senator, and ask them what the heck happened, and can you get that bill back into play?
Okay, yeah, I will. We're gonna make sure that we amplify that ongoing, because again, I don't know if it was written in your bill, but if not, and it comes back up, we need to make sure it's retro, because if it takes a year or something like that, and somebody does it.
The bill would have applied to the people impacted by this fire.
Okay, good. So regardless of when.
It would have been, even though it would have been statewide, it would have only applied to disasters that fall into the category of this one, a major disaster as proclaimed by the governor.
Okay, that's fine. Thank you. And then I just have a question, and I'm trying to be mindful of time. We have not quite a half an hour left, but this is really important, because I don't know if you're aware, and you might be, that it is said that Altadena's population, 57% is over the age of 60. And
Right.
we know that there are a lot of homes that have been passed down, generational homes, right? From 2 or 3 generations back. What happens in this case if there is a grandmother or a parent that has decided, you know what, I'm, 98 years old. I don't know that I will be here by the time I can get this house rebuilt, right? Depending on finding a contractor, getting a permit, going through all the hurdles, the insurance, everything. And if they feel that way and decide, I'm not going to sell the land because originally it was, I want to pass this down. I still want to pass this down, but I'm going to give you the land, right? Let's say you're my grandfather, I'm your granddaughter. You, Jeff, decides I'm going to give Toni the land, but Toni, also whatever my insurance proceeds are or whatever, I don't need that much to live off of, or I can live with you. I'm going to give you the money. You rebuild the house with the money. When I talked to Lawrence a couple of weeks ago, he said, let me stop you in that statement, because if someone does that, then they would fall out of Prop 13, the current property taxes that the grandmother has, which might be $1,200 a year. When that house is rebuilt, it will be reassessed and it will be at current market value, which, let's say the house is $2 million. They go from $1,200 a year in property taxes to $20,000. Can you give me the accurate answer on that, and what that looks like for people that may be in that position?
So Prop 19 can be really complicated. Actually, I have on the call with us Robert Izazaki from my staff, who's actually an ownership and Prop 19 expert. He might be able to help. But the Prop 19 does 2 things. One is it allows you, let's say you are that grandmother whose home burned, and you decide that I don't have the time to go through all this. I'm just going to leave. I'm going to sell the lot, and I'm going to buy another home. You can take your tax base, and when you purchase a new home, you can purchase anywhere in California. You can buy a home of any size, and you can transfer your tax base to that new home. So if your home is worth $1 million and you find another $1 million house in Ventura County, let's say, but you bought the property for $100,000 40 years ago, you can take your tax base that's based on that $100,000 to your new home. So your taxes will be the same as they were in the home that you burned down. It won't be reassessed as new construction. The other part of Prop 19 allows for what we call intergenerational transfers. Mom and dad can transfer their property to their kids without reassessment up to $1 million.
Okay.
When you start getting a little bit more complicated, let's say you want to transfer your tax base to your new home, but you want to keep the land that burned and give that to your kids, that gets a little bit more complicated. And I'm thinking maybe this would be a good time to ask Robert to come in to help us navigate some of those nuances.
Thank you. Hi, Robert. I brought you in. So I understand what Assessor Prang said about if they move, but if they move and don't buy a new home, right? They just decide we'll be renters, right? We're not. I'm 98. I probably have 5-10 years left of my life or whatever, and nobody knows, right? It could be 2 years, but they say I don't want to go through that process because I'm hearing it's going to be well over $1 million to rebuild. I'm hearing that it's going to be 3 to 5 years, 2 at a minimum. So I'm going to live over here where I'm renting. I'm going to give you the land and the cash that I have from the insurance, or not, but I'm going to give you the land. You can get a loan to build a house, but you build a house on it. So if they give the land to the grandchildren or children or whatever, then what happens with that tax base?
Yeah, sure. And I think the answer that you said that my colleague Lawrence gave you a couple weeks ago, it sounds right on point. But I think what I can do is kind of expand and explain it step by step. So the rebuilding benefits that Assessor Prang was talking about earlier, if you rebuild like for like, you can keep your tax base, your pre-fire tax base. That applies only to the person who owned the property when it was destroyed. And
that's what
I see you nodding there. So say mom and dad, they own the property, they're elderly, the house burns down, they don't want to have to handle it anymore, but they want to pass it down to their kids. So they deed the land to their child. Since the child wasn't the owner at the time that the property was damaged or destroyed, they don't, at least under current state law, enjoy the benefit of that rebuilding benefit. So when they rebuild, like Lauren said, we will determine the fair market value of the newly constructed home, and that will inform the new tax base for the property.
So it goes from a rebuild to new build as new construction. And then what if it was, and thank you for that answer, but I'm going to put one more little caveat in it. What if it's in a trust? And so it's not going, the deed's not going from the parent to the child because it's in the trust. And the trust, the kids are in it and they decide to rebuild it. How does that work out?
Yeah, so you bring up an interesting point here with trusts. So trusts themselves are not an entity or something that can actually own property. It's the way I like to describe it is it's best viewed as a lens through which property ownership can be viewed. So say you have mom and dad, they own a piece of property, they have a revocable living trust drafted so for estate planning purposes. They transfer title to the property into the trust. While they're alive, they're still viewed as the owners of the property, not the trust. When they pass away, whoever's named as the beneficiaries, in many cases it's going to be the children, they become the new owners of the property. So say the property, a fire affected property is held in a trust. If mom and dad decide to rebuild while they're living, they can still enjoy the benefits of that rebuilding benefit that Assessor Prang was talking about. Once they pass away and the children decide to rebuild, on the other hand, that's the same thing as if the parents had deeded the property to the children. So the date of death will trigger that change in ownership event.
Okay, good. That's so important. I see somebody, Eric Williams says, is my question still there? Eric, I don't see your question at all. So if you can retype it, we can ask Assessor Prang that. It's 10:40, so we do have just a few more minutes. He has a hard stop at 11. We will continue and do any of the announcements after that. But Jamal, did you see a question from Eric?
No, I sent him the form and I also asked him to type it into the chat. Already.
Yeah, and I just opened the form and I do not see any questions still in the form. But so yeah, he can type it in the chat and hopefully that comes up. Okay, that's interesting, Robert. Thank you for that information because I do want to make sure that questions that are either in my head or that I've discussed with people, which are Prop 13, Prop 19, transferring it in the event of this natural disaster, right? This major declared disaster, what that looks like. So we would need to encourage people that if this is what Lawrence said also. The owners, the parents, the grandparents, whoever, have to start the process to rebuild, even if their grandchildren or whoever are talking to the contractors and working with them and saying, okay, this is what it's going to look like. They have to complete it and get certificate of occupancy, right? Even if they choose not to live there and at that point give it to the kids or whatever. But they have to start it and they have to finish it through getting the certificate of occupancy in order to keep that tax base at what it is from before. Is that correct?
Not quite. We're not interested in the certificate of occupancy. We're interested in the value of the property. The moment what happens when you are rebuilding, you're going to get a permit from the county, and we are going to get a copy of that permit, and that's kind of when the clock starts ticking. So we begin to assess the value annually of that property every January 1st. So if the home was completely destroyed, you begin rebuilding, and you're 10% done next January, we are going to restore 10% of your assessed value at that time. So you're going to get a tax bill for that 10%. And if you're completed a year later, then your full assessment will be restored once the home is completed. We don't look at the certificate of occupancy is something that the city uses for building standards. We look at whether or not the building is how complete is the building from the point in time the permit was pulled.
Okay, but the owners, which are the grandparents, parents, whoever, have to be the ones to rebuild, start that process or whatever. Once it's complete, you will do the assessment.
The benefits are assigned to the person who owned the property at the time of the disaster.
Of the disaster. Okay.
They're not transferable, except as Robert said, if there was a death and then there was an inheritance of that property, then that can continue.
Can change. Okay.
There is an adjacent subject to this that I wanted to reference, and maybe one of your other questions. But one of the issues that is a particular concern to us in Altadena deals with the ownership of property.
Yes.
One of the things we've discovered is that there's a lot of people who own property, and they have kind of what I might call a communal or a generational sense of it. So maybe it was grandma and grandpa's property, then mom and dad inherited it, and then years ago mom and dad passed, and you're there and you're still paying the taxes, but you never came to the county to update the deed.
Correct.
So what we discovered during this process is people came in to apply for property tax relief, and we looked at the application and the names on the application and the names in our records, and they don't match.
Yes.
And they would say, well, that was mom and dad's property. I've lived there my whole life. I've been paying taxes and taking care of everything. But if your name is not on the deed, it's not your house. It doesn't matter how long you've lived there. So there is a process where you can correct that. You can provide us the information we need to effect that transfer from parent to child. The current law says you have to do that within 6 months after we discover that there is an ownership discrepancy.
Okay.
Failure to do so could subject you up to 8 years in back taxes.
Whoa.
So this is another big concern to me. So I'm sponsoring another piece of legislation with Senator Sasha Perez. It's Senate Bill 293, and this will extend that period of time for you to fix that ownership issues.
Okay.
So let's say mom and dad passed away in 2005. You've been living there for the last 20 years, paying the taxes in your mom and dad's name. You apply for relief. We discover you're not the owner. You will be given an opportunity to document that you are indeed the child of your parents, and we can apply the property tax relief that you're entitled to retroactively. But you need to do that quickly.
6 months.
You'll have 3 years, but you don't want to have that continue any longer than that absolutely necessary.
And it's not 6 months from the date of the incident. It's 6 months from when it is found out. So if it was found out in March, right, they have 6 months. However, what would the ways be that they prove that? Would it be like, okay, here's the death certificate, here's my birth certificate also showing my parents on it, even though my parents didn't have a will or living trust that said, I get it? Would a death certificate and a birth certificate be sufficient?
Those are two important tools that would help us to identify the relationship and whether or not you qualify. Robert, are there other things that they might need?
Yeah, so that 6 month timeline, it really pertains to parent to child transfers and the date that you have to file a claim form for it. So even though you would be allowed to file that claim form to notify us, mom, dad passed away, I inherited the property, I want to keep their tax base. There may be, like the assessor said, tangential things that need to be done outside of our office. So if mom and dad own the property in their names, there was no will or trust or things like that, they may have to go through the probate process, which we know takes a long time.
Yeah.
So what this 6 months allows you to do is, we know that you may not know who the exact owner is going to be based on the probate. But if you file your claim form, your Proposition 58 or Proposition 19 parent to child exclusion claim form within that 6 month period, that'll allow us to say, the new property owners or the people who received the property, they made every best effort to file it within the deadline, even though they didn't know what the ultimate outcome was going to be. And so when probate has concluded and it says, these particular individuals are the owners of the property after mom and dad passed away, you can submit an updated claim form, and we'll use the original claim form's date as the date of submission.
Okay.
And so that's kind of the significance
excellent.
of that 6 month period.
Yeah, that's excellent information. Thank you. There is a question that I do want to get to since it's here. I don't want to ignore, from Eric Williams, that says, can you address ADUs and how they will be assessed, or if it's a garage converted, or if it's added on. So I don't know if that's a two-part question or whatever, but the first part of it is, can you address ADUs and how they will be assessed? So
Sure. So ADUs, building an ADU when you rebuild your property is outside that 110% envelope that's being offered for permits. So if you build an ADU, that is going to be assessed as new construction. It'll be assessed at current market value.
okay.
And so let's say your assessed value of your home, you have $1 million house that's assessed at $300,000 because you've lived there a long time. You rebuild it, we restore that $300,000 assessed value to your new $1 million home. But then you add a $250,000 ADU. So that's going to be assessed at full market value. So your new assessed value will be the $300,000 for that home, the $250,000 for the ADU. Your new assessed value will be $550,000 for your property. We use an assessment methodology. It's a cost-based methodology. It's based on the quality and types of materials that you build. We use regional standards for determining what that cost is, although we do look at your actual cost as part of that equation. Although it may not be a one-for-one match to what you paid and what we determine what the market value is, because the standard for assessment is market value, not actual cost. But we use it's a cost-based methodology, if that makes sense.
So, and I just have a question. Obviously, $250,000 home, I don't know, $3,000, $2,000 a year, whatever it is. What is, because I think this is a little confusing for people too. With the Prop 13 part on it, is it then that every year when there's a new assessment, it can't go more than, I believe it's 2%?
2% is maximum.
2%, okay. And then when they get that bill, because now I've built my house and I built an ADU or 2 ADUs. I have grown kids that I want out of my house, so I built them ADUs, right? And let's say I have 2 maximum 500 square foot ADUs or whatever, and I get assessed for the market value for each of those. When I get my assessment bill, like you said, even if it was 1, it'd be $550. If it was 2, it'd be $7 or whatever. Then I will get one portion, or we'll say one portion that has my $1 million home that's assessed at $300,000 because that's what my tax base was before it burned. And then I will have a supplemental bill or part of that bill, and it will have another line item. I'm not sure, and I'll have you correct us, that will say for your 2 new market value ADUs at $250,000 each, so $500,000. Here is the tax bill for those, and now this is your full tax bill. Is that how that works?
No. So if you, it all depends on how you structure the ownership. So if you have a home, your main home, and you build an ADU, you won't get separate tax bills. You're going to get a combined tax bill, unless you decide to do a parcel division and create a new taxable parcel for that ADU, or you do something else like condoizing that property. So in terms of inheritance, under Proposition 19, the only property tax base that you can transfer to your children is your primary residence. So if you're building ADUs hoping that you could transfer that to your kids, as a general rule, only the property that you live in qualifies. But there's a lot of, but the question you asked includes a lot of nuances, and I'm going to call on Robert to help us get through those nuanced components.
Sure.
Yeah, sure. Toni, could you repeat the question or rephrase it again?
Yeah. So let's say I burned down. I rebuild my house exactly like for like, right? I don't even add the 10% or the 200, but I build the same footprint because I liked it that way. I rebuild, but my backyard is big enough that I decide, well, my grown children, I want to put back here, right? So I build 2 ADUs that are 500 square feet, right? Because I have the land. They'll be separate. They'll live on their own. I'll make them pay me rent probably, but If I choose to do that, my home that is like for like that I've rebuilt, that I get valued, yes, say it's worth $2 million now after the rebuild, or $1.5 million, but I have that 300,000 tax base. I get that back on my primary that I live in.
Right.
My backyard is large enough. I build 2 ADUs for the kids, or if I just want to rent them, right? I have these 2 ADUs. They're both worth 250,000 each, right? So now on my bill, I will get one tax bill, but what I said was separate line items. Line item 1 showing my main property valued at 300,000. Line item 2, the 2 ADUs at 500, total 500. So it will show let's say it's $1,200 a year for mine at 300,000, right? Or 1,000. And then the 500,000 for the 2 ADUs, that will be at market rate. So I'll get one bill, not one plus a supplemental, but I'll get one bill and it will just be combined. But then will it be broken down to show me this is for my primary, this is for these new ones?
Yeah, so the assessor's correct. You'll get one bill. It won't be broken up into line items. So what will happen is, as new construction is completed, for, in any case, not just the fire context, but whenever new construction is completed, you'll get the supplemental tax bill. And so once all of those supplementals have issued, all the new construction has been completed, at some point, you'll get a bill that reflects the entirety of all the structures that are on the property, both the principal residence and then the 2 structures. But when you look at the bill, it'll just show one blanket figure for land and one blanket figure for improvements. And that improvement value will include all 3 structures.
Okay. So, and even if it's only one ADU, but whatever it is, it will have the improvement, because that's how it is now. It's a line item that says improvement and it's a line item that says land value. Right. So it will still show that way, but they will see an increase. But my question would be, well, how do I know then that what my original tax base was, if it's not broken down into separate? If it's just one figure, how do I know that I got my original tax base back? I know it was this much before, right? So do I just deduct what I assume it was from the new figure? That seems to me like I don't know that I got that back, right? Because I have a new figure. Yes, I have a new structure, but how do I know what the difference is for the structure versus for my original tax base?
Sure. And one thing that you can always do if you have questions, any assessment related question, is on our website, we have all the contact information for our district offices. So north, south, east, and west. So whichever area of the county, and I think it would be the East District that would handle a lot of the Altadena properties, you can give them a call or shoot them an email, and you can say, I understand that, after I got the property tax benefit from the destruction, the M&C benefit. I've rebuilt. In addition to the rebuilt principal residence, I put 2 ADUs on the structure. Could you walk me through what my new tax base, how that's put together? And they can show you, oh, this is where the 300,000 was reinstated. Here's where the 250,000 was for each of the ADUs were put into place. And they can kind of walk you through how the numbers square together.
So thank you. Thank you for that answer. But I'm going to ask you this, Assessor Prang, and I know there's like 4 minutes, you have a hard stop. Would it not make more sense to just add a separate line item? And is it super hard in your system to do that? Because a lot of people now are taking the opportunity to add an ADU, whether it's for a parent, whether it's for a child or whatever. And I would think it would be easier, this is the way my brain works, to add it separately to show this is the ADU, the new value, this is the, home, the primary with the regular value, versus your staff now having to get inundated with calls that people are going to be calling in asking, well, how come I can't see this? What is this?
So it's a good question. I don't think I have a good answer for you today.
Okay.
Generally speaking, the first year when you rebuild the additional ADU, you're going to know what the difference is between last year's bill and this year's bill, because you have something new there that wasn't there before. For our purposes,
nobody's going to have a bill until they rebuild, so they won't necessarily know. So that's what they'd have to go back.
They will continue getting bills.
Okay.
Even if the property was burned down, you're still going to get a bill for your land value.
Your land, right?
The land is still there, and will show 0 $0 for the improvement, which is the building. But once you've rebuilt it, it will be restored. For the purpose of our assessment is for tax purposes, and so we're really concerned with the totality of the property as opposed to its constituent parts. We do break it down between land and improvements.
Correct.
The law requires us to do that, and the other thing is that the bill doesn't come from us. The bill comes from the Treasurer Tax Collector's Office. But you raise an interesting question, and I will kick that around with my staff to see if there's some merit and feasibility to provide a little bit more of a breakdown, at least when that initial change is made.
I think that it would really be helpful, not just for Altadena, but you're talking us and Palisades, there's what, 14,000 or something, or, whatever it is, whatever the total is, because I know that that's not all houses. That includes cars and commercial structures. But when it comes to, I think the 6,200 in Altadena, however many Pasadena, Sierra Madre, and Palisades, that's still LA County. If you can take that into consideration, talk to the staff and say, look, on that initial one, somehow can we code it in so that it shows them, right? And then after that, they may know. I think that would be very beneficial to the communities because you will have less confusion. We're already dealing with a lot of confusion and unknown. And if that can help people at all and your staff not to have to constantly get calls about that, it might be something worth looking into for sure.
Good point. I appreciate you raising that. Thank you.
Yeah, thank you. We are at time for you. So I really, really appreciate you coming on, Assessor Prang and Robert, so that you all could answer some of the questions that we have and give clarity. You gave me a lot of clarity, and I know now going forward, I will make sure I say this 10% or 200 square feet, whichever is greater, has nothing to do with the assessed value. That is building code for, and I don't want to keep saying ADA compliant. It is health and safety, right? Is what it is. Although I do know I've talked to people and they're saying this is what it's about. And then yours is strictly taxes. You as the assessor, as the elected official to be the administrator over that, have to work within certain parameters and the law that the state has for all 58 counties, and you simply administer what that is. But you will look into maybe making a change on the bill or seeing how that can be done and kick that around and ask for when people do rebuild. And then if people have other questions, they can definitely contact their area. And I know for our area, it's in El Monte, but they can call the LA County Assessor's Office and get additional help that they need. And one big thing that you have said, and I want people to remember as you leave, please go either to the one-stop shop or go online and update your mailing address so that the County Assessor's Office has the correct mailing address should you need to receive something from them. Is there anything else for your last or your parting words that you'd like to say?
Yes, absolutely. There are some leave behinds I'd like to recommend to all of your viewers, and I would urge you to write these things down. One, if you own a home and that's your primary home, even if it's been demolished, fill out the homeowner's exemption. The homeowner's exemption will save you a little bit of money on your property taxes every year. About 40% of homeowners don't apply for this exemption because they don't know about it. It'll save you like $70 a year on your taxes in perpetuity. So do that.
Okay.
Two, this is something you need to have access to a computer, but sign up for the homeowner alert. The homeowner alert is a program we put together with the Registrar Recorder and the Department of Business and Consumer Affairs to fight title fraud. This is particularly important for people who are very vulnerable right now in the Altadena area. What happens is somebody will record a deed on your property, then they'll go get a loan, and then you'll discover this, and suddenly you're stuck with a loan on you'll fix your deed, you're stuck with a loan. You can register your email address with your property on our website, and anytime something is recorded on your property, such as a grant deed, a deed of trust, you will receive an email notification within 48 hours.
Okay.
And if that's something you intended to happen, it's fine. If it's not, you need to talk to authorities. If you don't do this, the first notification that you're going to get that something's been recorded on your property is a letter from the Registrar Recorder, usually 30 to 45 days after it's occurred. And
That's huge.
these title fraud scammers, within 30 to
They'll
45
be
days,
gone.
they can really rip you off.
Oh, wow.
Assessor Prang, about that email that comes out, does it have instructions on what to do if this was something that you didn't do yourself?
Yes, it gives you a phone number for the Department of Business and Consumer Affairs, and they can plug you in with proper authorities and get the ball rolling to correct it.
Excellent.
Okay.
Thank you.
And the last
And
thing
then-
is, if you own property, you can register your own profile online, and this will allow you to update your mailing address, to file for the homeowner's exemption, and do a lot of other things that you used to have to do by mail or in our office. So I encourage you to sign up for what's called Assessor e-Services, another free program that just makes it much easier to deal with our office and get the things.
What was it? Assessor what services?
E as in electronic.
E. Okay. E-services. Okay. I'm just writing it all down because we'll create a document and post and talk about this over the, upcoming weeks and everything. So I want to make sure I have that. And then I also have Assembly Bill 1253 is the one that you sponsored to align the property taxes with the increase, the 110%, 200 square feet, whatever. And then I have the ownership Assembly Bill, or not the Senate bill, I believe, 293, which is with Sasha Perez, to extend the 6 months to 3 years. Okay.
To fix your ownership records.
Okay. Anything else, Robert, that you want to leave with us?
No, I think the assessor covered it all.
All right. Well, thank you, Robert, for coming on and helping to give additional information that the assessor deferred to you to get a little bit more granular on. Thank you, Assessor Prang, for coming on today with us and spending an hour with us, giving us this very, very important information, the clarity that we need so that we can move forward, the information on Prop 13 and Prop 19. I look forward to, if need be, having you back on, but if not, I have Lawrence and Candy's information and I will email back and forth, and I have yours now, Robert. So if there's any questions, we can get the answers for our audience. And I really appreciate both of you being here today.
Yeah, it's very powerful.
Thank you so much. We're going to continue. Somebody said, I think we'll need a part 2 of the assessor, of Assessor Prang. Thanks for the clarification to both of you. And so, yeah, if we do, I'll get in touch with Candy again. And this time, even though we did it before and asked for questions, it will be mandatory that they ask questions so we can have them for you and you can have the data and have it ready. Even though it's good to ask on the fly and there weren't a lot of those, we still want to have a good conversation and give you the necessary information so that you are fully aware of what needs to be answered and can be ready to answer whatever questions. So thank you very much. We know you've got to go. Have a wonderful day. We will continue, everyone, with the announcements for the week, and then we will be dropping off shortly as well. But thank you, Assessor Prang. Have a great afternoon.
Thank you very much.
Bye-bye.
Wow,
Woo!
very good. Very good.
Very good.
A lot of
Very
clarification and
Man.
more confusion, to be completely honest.
Yes. I'm a little confused, but that whole 10%, 200 square feet, we have been saying it over and over. We've gone to the website, we've showed it, but to know now that it is totally separate from the taxes and it has to only do with building and the permits, like that's kind of mind blowing because they have been linked together forever. And everybody, Eric Williams is on here and he called the assessor of the day 2 or 3 or 4 times and got that same answer that I was getting. Yeah. Because I was getting that same, no, you can do the 110%. The 10% you're not going to be reassessed on. It'll be part of your build. And then 11% and be above will be. And so now for Assessor Prang to say, no, they don't have anything to do with each other. Even if you go 10% over, we're going to reassess that, or that 200 square feet. And I think that that's huge as people are beginning to talk to contractors and they have to figure out, do they want that additional square footage, right? Even though the county says they have to have it because of the health and safety, which is the wider hallways, the doorways, the bathrooms, all of that. So it makes sense to me that Assembly Bill 1253, we talked to Herabedian and Perez and Judy Chu. Well, Judy Chu, no, that's Congress. But our state reps, and say, look, we need this bill, because also if it goes retroactive or to this fire, then we need it. Because if we went on and built because the county said we had to do, we could increase 10% or 200 square feet, which is greater, whichever is greater. And we did that. But now our assessment for this extra 200 square feet is like, oh my God, I got all this extra money to pay. That something really needs to happen with that. I mean, it's going to take us really lobbying our state reps who are, Herbedian and Perez, because otherwise people are gonna get a bill later and be like, what in the heck? I didn't think that this was that.
Yeah, before we started, I was asking the assessor Prang, what are some of the most common, questions and concerns that are being brought to you, during this situation? And so he kind of addressed it when he was talking about how there's going to be a tax bill based on half the year because everything is provided in arrears when you're assessed, but then there'll ultimately be a refund, and then later on there might be another tax bill. So there's going to be a lot of confusions, and the fact that there's 3 separate departments that are kind of involved in that, and again he alluded to that,
It's gonna be a
it
mess.
just makes it's a bureauccy at its
It's
finest,
gonna
right?
absolutely, and
And
it's gonna be a mess.
unfortunately, before this is fixed,
Yeah,
all of Altadena will have been rebuilt.
right.
Unfortunately,
Yeah, and then you're
if it's
gonna have
fixed.
and you're gonna have people that are like, wait a minute, because okay, where we went for our meeting yesterday in
hmm
Burbank?
hmm
Brian and I afterwards went to their kind of
The
like a
lot
lot party,
unveiling.
right?
Yeah.
In Altadena. And I was talking to Jonathan there, or maybe he said it before we left, but that he had built some units in Long Beach, and it's going on year 3, and he still hasn't gotten a new tax bill with the assessment for the new unit.
Right.
And
I was
so,
actually going to ask the assessor
yeah,
about
you
that.
were there at that time, and the
hmm
fact that he said they're so far behind. So if that's on just normal construction that he built 2 years ago, and he hasn't gotten a new assessment, and then we got 6,200 homes in Altadena
That was
and commercial stuff and Palisades and
my
Cimarron and
question
Pasadena.
yesterday.
Yeah, what happens then? And it's cool
And
because I got all of their information, Jamal,
yeah,
and we'll put
yeah.
it out there so people can email them. But it might be a good one for Robert since he knows so much about it, right? But what happens? When are you getting people these tax bills? And then are you going to give them a tax bill that's 3, 4, 5 years old and expect them to be hit with 5 years of in arrears tax payment and expect them to pay for it? Like,
Right. That's
if
the
you do
question.
not have the staff now, and we know there's budget cuts and might not be the staff, what are they going to do for that? Are they going to give like some grace and say, hey, we just couldn't do the assessment yet, so from right now when we issue you the assessment, not from when you rebuilt? Or are they going to say, we'll let you pay it a little at a time instead of that twice a year? We'll break it up over something. That is going to be a nightmare if they hit people with tax bills that are a couple years, 2, 3 years past due because they are behind.
Yeah.
So yes, maybe we get more questions. Maybe people saw this today and decide they have some other questions and bring him back on and get those questions ahead of time, send them over to the office on that same form that we have. And also, if we could put that link up, if there's anybody viewing that still has additional questions or something else came to your mind and you didn't want to type it, you can still go here and put those questions in, because the county assessor's office, Candy, who coordinated all of this, has full access to the spreadsheet that the questions will be on. So if this conversation with him triggered you to having some additional questions, feel free to ask. And we will get them over, and then we'll come back with their answer here. Or we'll say, okay, we'll bring them back on in a few weeks or something. And now these questions, Assessor Prang, we need answers to, right?
Right.
So I think that, this was kind of like a tip of the iceberg
Oh, indeed.
today.
Indeed.
And we'll have to have him back on. And if he's not available, somebody like Robert or even Lawrence, because they really, really know it. And sometimes when Lawrence deals specifically with policy, and he is a deputy assessor, and then Robert, who is more in the PIO space but knows a lot of it, I think even if we have a couple of them come on together, if the assessor cannot, and he says, yeah, you guys answer the questions. If that's what you guys want, please let us know. If there are other questions you need answered, ask it. Please let us know. And we're going to get the right people to you or bring them on to you.
Absolutely. Because Lawrence was the one that I spoke to, Lawrence and Candy
Correct.
at that.
Lawrence and Candy are the ones.
Yeah, I forgot that name. But yeah, and I'm sure there are more questions. I mean, we didn't get to Edub's actual question about whether it's an add-on to a garage versus a completely separate
we did.
structure. I didn't hear the specific thing about a garage.
Well, a garage is the same as almost the same as an ADU. If you were converting it, it's now an additional dwelling unit because somebody is living there.
I got you. I'm sure he wanted to hear from Prang, Assessor Prang or Robert. So we'll ask that specifically to them and see what their specific response is.
Well,
I think
what we can do, Eric, is put it in where those questions are. And if Jamal already sent you that link, whatever questions you have, that were partially answered or didn't get answered, please, anybody, go to that link, put the questions in. Candy has access to it, and so does Robert, who was on here. And they work for the assessor. They will get the answers that we can then either bring them back on or have those answers and read them off verbatim from the county assessor's office.
And we'll post them on the website too.
Yeah, please utilize the link. Please still ask your questions and see what questions you still need answered. Wow.
Yeah, just realize that, remember guys, this is a years long journey we're on. So it's not just we have folks on one time, they're going to answer all our questions, everything's cool. We know that there's a lot of confusion and stuff is going to come up later. So let's keep this as an ongoing conversation. We'll definitely bring folks on and have those questions answered, just as Toni has mentioned. And we need you to engage because I know we don't have millions of people that watch this, but we hope that you watch this, you share this with other folks, and definitely engage with us. Like I said, if there's people or questions that you'd like to have us either answer or have on the show, let us know. If you have needs. What this started out as is us providing what we envision is needed by everybody, and we're not going to be able to cover everything. So if there's certain things you might want that we haven't covered, or you want somebody back, let us know, because it's a two-way conversation, and we're here for everybody in Altadena. So we want to help.
And it's great that you engage and ask live, but when we have people that are coming on like this, and like we had Colonel Avichal on last week, we had one question. I'm trying to get Judy Chu on. I'm trying to get Catherine Barger on. I'm trying to get Sasha Perez on, Senator Perez and Senator Herbedian. When we put links like this, we really need you all to go there with questions that you have for them, even if it's because you've talked to somebody in the community or you're upset or you're like, how come this isn't happening? It's great to vent on Facebook or social media or to your friends. But if we bring people on here, it's a lot of work for us to get these officials on. And I'm on calls at 7 a.m, at 9 p.m. Jamal sees them out there, gets cards, and then I call or email or whatever. We are doing this because we want this information, obviously for ourselves, but for our entire community of Pasadena, Altadena, Sierra Madre, whoever. And obviously having the LA County Assessor on also applies to any disaster. So whether someone has had a flood a year ago, whether they've had Palisades had the fire, we know out in Ventura County, they get mudslides and things after, rains. Whatever disaster there is that has been declared a national or state or major disaster, these things apply. So for us to go the extra step, talk to people, convince them that this is a platform and a show that they should come on, we really need your engagement, and we really need you to ask the questions ahead of time. It's not that they won't answer something that comes on the fly. It's that they are trying to get the data that they can, just like the Colonel last week. They asked for questions ahead. I said, one of the big ones, I want to know exactly how many have been cleared, truly, right? Because numbers are floating all around. And I wanted him to define so that people understood. They look at the...
Looks like we lost Toni for a second. She'll probably be joining us again. In the interim, let me give her a few minutes before so. But again, to her point, when we do have these officials on, it's really cool if they can actually know what questions you guys want, because some of them may actually require a deeper dive. May not be able to just fly off the top of the head with the response, and it may be a little bit more intricate. So they may want to do a little research to make sure not only they provide the correct answer, but the full answer, because some of the questions you may have may be a bit more complex and not just as simple as you may think. So utilize those forms when we actually have them, um, because it'll be very useful. Yes, of course, you can still ask questions on the fly, but it would be a lot more effective. I truly believe what we truly believe at Altadena Talks, to actually have several questions for the folks to know in advance what's happening, and to provide some real full answers, because there may be some additional resources that they might be able to pull and share with us, maybe a flyer or an event or something pertaining to a particular question you might have, that they might not have accessible if it's a question on the fly. So hopefully that makes sense. In the interim, looks like Teeny, why am I saying this? Toni is having a challenge coming back on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to do the slides right now. I have to do it in a slightly different format because our, tech issues as usual. So let's just jump into it. I'm going to do this, as I always say. I'm going to take this off, take this, and let's see if we can get this going. And I'm going to remove this banner. Sorry, folks. All right, cool. So to begin with, we have, as we know, the disaster recovery centers have closed by that title. The one that was on Woodbury, they closed on 31st of May. We now have the Altadena Community Center, which is providing the same resources. So we have FEMA, SBA, and the LA County Health is mental health department is actually there as well. These are this is Altadena Community Center. It's at 730 East Altadena Drive. They're open Monday through Friday, 9 a.m. to 5 p.m., and they are closed on weekends, so only during the week. Next, we have the LA County One Stop Permit Center. Now, this spot is actually open. It's the same one that we've had when it originally, it did relocate once, but it's the same one at 464 West Woodbury Road, Suite 210 in Altadena. They have walk-in hours only Monday through Friday, 8 a.m. to 4:30. And then if you would like to have an actual appointment, now for the rebuild consultation, you can do it on a one-on-one basis, but they also have small group sessions as well. You can set those up. Those are Monday, Wednesday, and Friday, 8:30 a.m. to 12 p.m., or Saturdays from 8 a.m. to noon. And if you'd like to set up an appointment for the Southern California Edison planner, you can actually set those up on Mondays and Wednesdays only from 8 a.m. to noon. When you actually go to these locations, you go, when you want to set up the appointment, you go to recovery.lacounty.gov/rebuilding/one-stop-permit-centers. Next, we have the June 30th deadline for those who didn't do anything regarding the right of entry, or those who actually opted out of having the Army Corps of Engineers do the removal of their debris on their home. So the 30th is the deadline for you to completely remove the debris from your home. Otherwise, it might possibly be declared a public nuisance. And if so, the county may take it upon themselves to remove the debris and then pass the cost on to the property owner. And if this is the case, and for some reason you don't make the payment and pay it, they are actually able to possibly put a lien on your property to get the money back. So just make sure you're not in this situation and take care of your business. The Mortgage Fund is a state program that provides much needed relief for mortgage payments for displaced families whose homes were destroyed or left uninhabitable by California disasters. Now, for eligibility, you would be eligible if your primary residence was destroyed or is uninhabitable due to a qualified disaster from the 1st of January of 2023 to the 8th of January of 2025. You would also need to meet the program income limits. You must have a mortgage or reverse mortgage, and you must own a single family home, a condo, or permanently affixed manufactured home, which might include up to 4 units. Now, if you do qualify and are selected, the fund's going to pay 3 months of mortgage payments for you up to a max of 20 grand. The funds will never have to be repaid, and it's free to apply. The grants will be paid directly to your mortgage servicer, so you won't touch it. And the grants, the applications are beginning today, June 12th. And the funds are limited, and once submitted, applications will be reviewed in the order that they're received. So if you want to apply, you would apply at calassistmortgagefund.org, and you would click apply now to get started. Now, there's a couple of events that are actually set up to help you through this process. The first one is the fire recovery support with neighborhood housing service. Now, this is actually going to be it's today and it's tomorrow, and it's going to be at the Altadena Public Library. Doesn't show a time. I'm not sure why it doesn't show a time, but I guess during the public library's normal operating hours. So that's at 600 East Mariposa Street in Altadena. There's going to be financial counselors on site at the library and to conduct in-person appointments for wildfire survivors who need application assistance. And this again is for the CalAssist mortgage fund that I just read before. This is today and tomorrow. And then also Saturday, there's an event at Loma Alta Park, also to help people in filling out the applications and asking some questions. So you can register. This is put on by Kathy Barger, and you can register at Mortgage Relief 0614.eventbrite.com. It's a free event, but when you go there, you still have to register to get a ticket. They, just need to be accountable of, find out how many people are coming. This again is Saturday, the 14th from 10 a.m. to 1 p.m. at Loma Alta Park, 3330 North Lincoln Avenue in Altadena. All right. So I know we passed Wednesday, but there is free medical and mental health clinic. This is Mondays and Wednesdays. So perhaps if you need this, you could set something up for this coming up Monday. They're available from 12 to 5 p.m. And this is at Eaton Health Village, located at Pasadena Seventh Day Adventist at 1280 East Washington Boulevard in Pasadena. They'll take walk-ins, or you can set up an appointment. If you do want to set up an appointment, you would contact 951-595-7032, and they handle medical consultations, medication refills, mental health services, and case management primarily. And then secondarily, on a monthly basis, they have vision and dental help. Amplify Juneteenth community conversational and oral history documentary screening is going to be provided Friday, June 13th from 6 a.m. from 6 p.m. to 8 p.m. at Victory Bible Church. This is located at 1497 North Hill Avenue in Pasadena. There's going to be remarks by Mrs. Tina Williams on faith, resilience, and housing injustice. Amplify screening. Then a panel discussion with impacted residents, and then a call to action from Dr. Gilbert Walton, the Center for Restorative Services or Restorative Justice. There will also be complimentary food and drinks provided. This Saturday, the 14th, is the last installment of the Loma Alta Park Spring Concert Series. This is going to feature the Dwight Carroll Quartet. This concert is going to be from 12 p.m. to 4 p.m. It's free admission, and the address to Loma Alta Park is 3330 North Lincoln Avenue in Altadena. Should you have any questions about this event, you can reach out at 626 398 5451. And then again, Saturday, the grand reopening of Fair Oaks Burger. This is happening from 9 a.m. to 12 p.m. We're very excited for them to reopen for normal business. Parks and Recreation and Juicy Little Finds are bringing games. The Altadena Library Van will be in attendance. Pasadena Humane Society, Hand in Paw, and the Love of Animals are holding adoptions for dogs displaced in the fires. There's going to be free ice cream and sliders by Fair Oaks Burger, as well as fresh produce provided by Food for Health. There's also going to be artwork done by Noah Hayton, and he's a local member of Altadena and Pasadena. We also have on Saturday the 5th annual Dina Juneteenth celebration. It's going to be at from 10 a.m. to 3:30 p.m. at Metropolitan Baptist Church. This is located at 2283 North Fair Oaks Avenue in Altadena. There are going to be several giveaways, gifts, and scholarships such as 200 free Dina Juneteenth T-shirts are going to be provided. $10,000 in gift cards are going to be provided, and $50,000 MTR academic scholarships are going to be given out. So definitely attend this event. It's going to be very awesome. And the last flyer that I have is for the actual Juneteenth, next Thursday, June 19th, at Loma Alta Park from 12 to 1:30. There will be the 4th annual Juneteenth celebration. And it's going to have Altadena Oral History Project review, which is going to be Faces of Resilience told through words and photographs, chronicling the African American cultural legacy before and after the Eden Canyon fire. Also, there will be the Ellen Garrison Clark Scholarship Award ceremony. These scholarships are awarded to local high school students in the spirit of Ellen Garrison Clark. It's $30 prior to the event. And if you get tickets at the door or register at the door, they're $35. To RSVP, you would go to altadenahistoricalsociety.org, or you could scan the QR code. Myself, that helps. Hopefully you guys heard me. If you didn't, then I did all that for not. But hopefully you guys heard me when I did the announcements. I didn't see any sort of notification that you didn't. But we will do them again tomorrow should there have been an issue. Today was a great episode. Toni wasn't able to come back on. I'm sure she had another appointment or meeting. But thank you to Assessor Jeff Prang, as well as his I forgot his role, but it's Robert Isosaki. I apologize if I butchered your name, but you guys were amazing guests in talking about assessor issues, and I do believe we're going to actually have you guys on again very soon. So everybody, thank you for tuning in. I'm going to go ahead and end it now. Have a wonderful day, and we will definitely see you tomorrow. So peace out from me and the rest of the folks from Altadena Talks. Talk to you later.